The Oort Perimeter, Chapter 7. Wait, let me get this straight. You want to request asylum from us, said Mike. Sin nodded. I do. May I ask why? Asked Mike. It is very simple. I have no one else that I can turn to and whom I trust. Well, it's nice that you thought of us, but we can't help you. We've got enough problems of our own, and the last thing we need to deal with right now is an issue of asylum. Especially considering that you're hiding from those who overthrew your government. Sin crossed his hands and stared deeply at Mike. There is still a large contingent of our fleet, and many in our army, who stand behind me even now. With your help we could easily restore the government and install me as president. Once in office I could punish those who would so willingly destroy what we have spent millennia building. With your ships, and their advanced weapons and cloaking capabilities, we could easily sneak into the, whoa, hold on. I don't know what kind of dispute you have with your government, or whoever's in charge now, but we can't get involved. First off, it's not my decision. Something like that would have to go through the Chancellor and the Council. And, even if you told them about this, they'd probably say exactly the same thing I would. Namely, that Earthfleet is not an all-powerful military force. We're a home defense force, and nothing more. Plus, there's no way we could go on the offensive, even if we wanted to. For starters, we don't have enough ships. We're barely able to protect Seoul as it is. So we definitely don't have enough strength to go on the offensive. Not even a limited one. But if we provided you with the resources, manpower and materials you need, you could build a fleet that would rival any other in the galaxy. Mike waved his hands dismissively. That's another thing. We don't share our technology with anyone, anywhere, anytime, for any reason whatsoever. We depend on that technology for our survival, and if someone got their hands on it, they could build countermeasures that would wipe away our technological advantage, leaving us vulnerable to whoever wanted to exterminate us. And, from my understanding, there's a lot of them out there, standing in line, just waiting for that opportunity. As such, there's too much at stake. So I can't risk it. Sin looked at him in surprise. Then you will not help me? Even after all that the Gaekvan have done for you? Mike shook his head. As much as I'd like to, I can't. I realize you're my friend, and I'd love to do something to help you, but my hands are tied, both by rule and the harsh truth of reality. Sin nodded reservedly. Then I guess that all our years of assistance and protection means nothing to you. Mike shook his head. No, they mean a lot to us. But the short of it is, our responsibility is to our people, and them alone. If we were stronger, then we might consider helping you in any way we could. But that likely won't happen for at least a millennia or more, if ever. And let's not forget the fact that we're nowhere near your size. Counting everyone in Seoul, there's less than 8 billion of us, most of whom still live in blissful ignorance of our existence, or yours for that matter. Compare that with the multiple trillions of your own people, and you get an idea of just how badly outnumbered we are. So, even at our strongest, we're not much better than a fly on a horse. A simple flick of the tail and we'd be gone. Sin pursed his lips. I see. So not only will you not help us in this time of crisis, I suspect that you would even turn me over to my pursuers if they asked you to, he asked. If they ask, yes. We'd have no other choice but to comply with their wishes. What if they attacked you in an effort to get to me? What would you do then? Mike furrowed his brow. Well, we'd obviously defend ourselves, but we wouldn't go beyond that, and we certainly wouldn't hand you over to them if they did, as we don't negotiate with people who attack us. And what if you were to pretend I wasn't here? Mike shook his head. That wouldn't work either. There are too many eyes out there watching this system. They likely already know you're here. And even if they don't, they'll find out soon enough. So, in the end, there's still nothing we can do for you. All we can do now is ask you to leave as we can't risk your presence here. I understand. Then you have brought doom upon yourselves, for I can attest that those who are now in power will in no way ensure your protection as we have. If anything, they may see you as a threat, and determine that the only safe course of action will be your annihilation. Mike sighed. He felt as though he was betraying his best friend, and dooming Earth to extermination at the same time. But he knew that, to take sides in this conflict, would be worse than taking none. No matter which way he moved right now, this was literally a no-win situation. He shrugged. Then we'll do the best we can on our own. But no matter what happens, we still can't help you, nor get involved. Earth, and its people, is what we've all taken an oath to protect, even with our lives, and we've lived by that motto for centuries, and will continue to live by it, no matter what we must face. Sin stood up and stuck out his chest in defiance as he tossed back the trains of his tunic in anger. I suspect that you would gladly hide a wanted criminal before you would hide me. No. I wouldn't do that, and you know it. Our rule of no asylum applies to everyone, be they criminal or politician. If they're a visiting dignitary, we'll guarantee them safe passage and ample protection while they're here, as per diplomatic requirements. But we do not, nor will we ever, grant asylum. Even if we wanted to, we're just not strong enough to do it. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. Now, please, you must leave before someone comes looking for you here. If the Gaelic Vaughn are under new leadership, I'd prefer to stay on their good side as long as possible. Is that your final answer? Will you, in no way, waver from this decision? No, said Mike affirmatively. Sin grinned and nodded. Then I am pleased to inform you that you have passed our test. Mike nodded, and then paused. Wait, what? Test, he said in surprise. Sin tilted his head back and laughed boisterously as Mike looked on in confusion. You have been tested, my friend, and found desirable. Wait, this was all just a test. Then everything you told me was all part of an elaborate ruse, said Mike in surprise. I must apologize for deceiving you, my friend. It pains me to have done this, but I was asked by the members of the galactic community to come in the guise of a fugitive in need of aid in order to test you. Being that I am your friend, I was chosen as the most desirable candidate to do that, said Sin. But why? What did we do this time that we needed to prove ourselves? Asked Mike. You did nothing. You were simply you. What you do not understand, Admiral, is that there are members in the galactic community that fear you, fear what you have become, and the impressive strength you have gained in such a short time. Mike cocked an eyebrow. Oh, we already know that. But I wouldn't exactly call what we have impressive. Barely sufficient perhaps, but not impressive, and certainly nothing to be feared. Yes, but fear has a strange ability to distort reality, making great monsters out of simple shadows. Some of this fear comes from the fact that your ships are many times more powerful, faster, and more advanced than anything else in the galaxy. Mike shrugged. Well, it's not our fault if the rest of the galaxy wants to sit on their thumbs and stagnate rather than continue to advance themselves. We're certainly not going to just sit around and do nothing. It's in our blood to always explore, expand and improve ourselves as we constantly seek out new knowledge. As it should be. One should always seek one's own betterment, even if others will not. However, that still does not change the fact that they are afraid you might seek to leave Sol and stretch out your hand across the galaxy, conquering all that you encounter. Pfft. We'd have to be awfully desperate to do that. Yes, you would, and it's that desperation that they fear, especially with the resources of Earth being so quickly depleted, and its environment destroyed, he said. Mike frowned in disgust. Yeah, well, we're trying to get them to change that. But talking to greed is like talking to a brick wall. Sin chuckled. Yes, it most certainly is. Mike sighed. So, if you're not really a fugitive, can I assume that you won't be staying here long? Sin shook his head. No, I won't, much to my regret. I need to return to the capital, as there is much that requires my attention, not to mention the report I must now give. Well then, how about I rustle up a ship for you that can take you home? Sin waved dismissively. That will not be necessary. My ship, and its escorts, await me just beyond your sensor range. When I signal for them, they will come. He turned around and motioned to one of his servants, who pulled a small communicator out of his pocket and tried to raise Sin's diplomatic cruiser. I'd suggest going out into the main promenade before you do that. These conference rooms are shielded, so no signals get in or out, unless they're fleet approved. Essentially they're designed to be a SCIF, for lack of a better term. Sin was intrigued at this. A SCIF, he asked. What is that? It's the acronym for Sensitive Compartment and Information Facility. In short, that's a room that is secured in such a way that sensitive conversations and other information can be shared without risk of outside spying. Ours, though, are tweaked slightly to allow only fleet-approved signals in and out. That way high-ranking officers can communicate with those outside the room without breaching room security. Sin cocked an eyebrow and grinned. The idea of Earthfleet possessing such a room greatly intrigued him. So you only allow fleet-approved signals in or out? What would those be? He asked. Just command channels mostly. Mine's one of them. The exact frequencies, encryption methods, and other details that are involved, I can't tell you. But, suffice it to say, those are the only signals allowed in or out. Sin nodded. A wise decision. Then, if we must, let us go to your promenade so that we may call our ships. Mike motioned towards the door. All right then, this way please. One of the guards can show you to a good place to get the best reception. Will you not be escorting us personally? Asked Sin in surprise. Mike shook his head. I've got to get back to Chancellor Nordum. He's entertaining a group of Syrian diplomats up on the promenade. Sin's eyes narrowed. What are such dreadful creatures doing on your station? He asked suspiciously. Mike shrugged. They said they wanted to open up diplomatic relations with us, and the Chancellor was happy to oblige. Sin nodded reservedly. Indeed. Then take me to your Chancellor. I wish to have a few choice words with your Syrian visitors. Mike frowned. Yeah, you and probably half the galaxy, he muttered. Sin grinned. Indeed. Lars Nordic was a master of the ancient art of cloak and dagger. From a little child he'd dreamed of being a secret agent for the Society, a man of shadows and intrigue, and now he was one, and the best in all of Seoul as well. While he was a man of many mysteries, he was also one of the most trusted field agents in the Society Intelligence Corps. Normally he was assigned to investigate and observe the operations of Black Orchid on Earth, a task he was very good at. But today he had a special assignment, observing the Syrian diplomats. Lars leaned around a corner in front of him as he studied the 3 bat-like Syrians and their 4 humanoid Aldovian servants. The Syrians had been fairly docile most of the day, and lacked many of the usual incriminating traits of his regular quarry. However, their servants were another story, as they appeared to be more on par with what he was expecting. Numerous times that day his team had captured devices that the servants had hidden in various places along their way in an attempt to bug the station and possibly grab some valuable data for their Jonah masters. The ship is clear. All spying equipment has been either neutralized or rendered null-functional. They'll be 2 sectors away before they realize their instruments are giving them nothing but dummy data, came a voice over his communicator. Lars pressed his ear and whispered, "Good job. Now get out of there. Once you're clear, post 2 people nearby and watch that ship like a hawk. Let me know if they catch on to our hack of their systems. The rest of you get down to the promenade. The diplomats are moving into the guild's area." "Roger that," came the reply. Lars tapped his ear again, and said, "Agent 207, have you recovered any more of their devices?" "Negative. If they've planted any more recently, they've done it in a way I can't detect," came the reply. "Well then gather your team and sweep the promenade thoroughly once they're out of the area. I don't want to miss anything they may have left behind, intentionally or otherwise," said Lars. "Yes, sir," came the reply. Lars soon moved out into the main concourse and closed quickly on the diplomats before turning and slipping into a nearby corner where he lingered as Chancellor Nordum, the Syrians, their servants, and a small cadre of guards made their way further down the promenade. He watched in interest as one of the servants brushed past a data panel which flickered briefly. He tapped his ear again. 219, did that servant just bug that panel? He asked. Can't tell. Want me to check it out? Yes, please. All right, I'm on it. Lars nibbled at his lower lip. He wasn't liking this one bit. The servants were good at what they were doing. In fact, almost too good. It's been tagged. I'm summoning a hot team to clean it, said the agent. Lars swore. This was getting ridiculous. Understood. He then slipped out of the doorway of the pub he was hiding in and moved further down the promenade until he reached another store where he turned and pretended to examine some of the merchandise there. He watched carefully out of the corner of his eye as one of the Aldovian servants reached out to put a bug on a nearby soldier, and then withdrew his arm quickly when the man moved unexpectedly. All right, that's enough. Teams 3 and 2, move in. We're going to end this little charade and... Wait, hold. Something's happening, he said. He watched curiously as a tall, well-dressed Gaekvan man walked up to Nordum, followed closely by the Grand Admiral. This surprised Lars. Well. What's he doing here? He thought to himself. Sir, what should we do? Came a voice over his communicator. Continue sweeping the area for bugs. Ensure that the servants haven't left any more surprises for us. I'll deal with our guests personally. Yes, sir. Lars then turned and zeroed in on the Syrians. After a few moments he grinned. This should be interesting. Nordum stared in curiosity as Sin strolled up to him. Adjutant President Sin. I didn't know you were coming, he said in surprise. Neither did I, muttered Mike in reply. He's here on a special ambassadorial visit. He wished to speak with the Grand Admiral in private. Hence why you weren't notified of his arrival, said Sarah. Nordum looked curiously at Mike, who waved his hand dismissively, and said, I'll fill you in later. I look forward to your report, replied Nordum. Sin turned and glared harshly at the 3 Syrian diplomats who seemed to melt and almost shrivel up in fear in his presence. Their Aldovian servants, much to everyone's surprise, showed no signs of concern, despite who was standing in front of them. Given what they knew they'd been doing, their obvious poker faces, in light of their almost certain discovery, were quite impressive, to say the least. What is your purpose here? Said Sin sternly. We're just here on a diplomatic mission, stuttered Sirdar nervously. Diplomatic mission indeed, grunted Sin. He walked over and stood nose to nose with one of them as his eyes bored into them, exposing the very fabric of their dark souls to the cruel light of day. This wouldn't, by chance, have something to do with a request from your Junna masters to gather information about the Jinn, would it? No, shrieked Sirdar nervously. Sin watched as the diplomat twitched his fingers anxiously. He grinned. Just as I thought. Chancellor, your guests are not here on a mission of diplomacy, but rather one of espionage. Nordum looked at the Syrians as he cocked an eyebrow in disgust. One of the Aldovians cocked an eyebrow in return, impressed that they'd been so easily discovered. But, beyond that, he showed no other emotion. We suspected as much. So, as a precaution, we had them isolated here, and then followed the moment they arrived, said Nordum. He motioned to several men further down the promenade, one of whom was Lars, who hurried over to his side. Have our guests been dishonest in their actions? Asked Nordum. Yes, sir, we've identified quite a number of hacks, bugs, and spying attempts by them and their servants. All have been neutralized, said Lars. The same Aldovian as before frowned slightly at Lars, but also looked at him with great respect. Anyone who could catch them doing what they had was worthy of respect, be they human or otherwise. Just as I thought. Mr. Nordic, would you and your men kindly escort these scoundrels to their ship as soon as possible, said Nordum. Yes, sir, said Lars. Nordum then looked at the Syrians, and said, Know this. Because of your treachery, from here on out, you, and all other Syrians, are banned from Sol space until further notice. Sin grinned as the Syrians were then led away, whimpering and quivering in fear as they went. Their Aldovian servants, however, remained quiet and professional the entire time, even though, deep down, they felt defeated, having failed at their mission. Detestable creatures they are, said Sin with a hint of disgust. Yeah, that was my opinion of them too, said Mike. Nordum nodded. It's a good thing we took your advice to be cautious of them. My advice? Asked Sin curiously. Well, not yours specifically. We've been reading the security dispatches your people regularly send us. They've proved invaluable in helping us identify potential problems in advance, such as the one today. Without them I'm certain we would have come out the worse for it during many delicate situations, such as this, in days past. Sin grinned. I'm glad you are pleased with our gift. Now, if you will excuse me, I must return and give my report to those who sent me. Can't you stay a little longer? Sin shook his head. I was to return as soon as our meeting was over. Your Grand Admiral can fill you in on the details of what occurred. Nordum nodded and looked at Mike. I look forward to reading his report. He then turned and bowed to Sin. It was a pleasure having you here, if only briefly. So, since I cannot offer you any worthy gesture of hospitality at this time, may I at least walk you to your ship? Sin smiled. Yes, you may.